Welcome, everybody. I am Tristan Miller, and I'm with the Ash Sean Show. We've been doing this show for over 2.5 years now, and we are all volunteers. And our whole goal is to help you electrify and make it easier. And at any time, if you want us to do your home, help you along your road to electrification, please reach out to us. We are happy to help everyone and anyone. Um, and I also want to let you know that we have a great team here today. Cora is here if you want to wave. Cora from Bright Saver, from a local nonprofit here in California, as well as the co-founder Rupert Mayer from Bright Saver. And Lisa here from Rewiring America is also joining, along with your regular co-host, Pete Marsh, CCL's National Electrification Team, myself, Tristan Miller, the Vice Chair of Climate Reality, and Wayne Morgan with our South Central Coast chapter. All of the videos are available on YouTube. I'll be putting that in the chat as well. And tonight we're going to be spotlighting Bright Saver and how they are jump-starting the low-cost solar movement in California. And we'll be covering our all-new Redwood Energy Electrification Guide, compliments of Redwood Energy and Sean Armstrong. And let me introduce you to Sean, our host tonight and clean energy champion. Take it away, Sean.
All right. Hey, cool. Thank you so much, Tristan. Here we go. All right, folks, I'm going to give you a kind of a rapid history to contextualize what we're trying to do here and give you opportunities to ask questions along the way, give you some places you can look. So if this goes fast, it's okay. This is a cursory view, and there's a guide that's online. It's our pocket guide to all electric retrofits of single family homes. It's free. It gets downloaded like 5 times a day around the world. We're very proud of it. It's a good resource because it has lots of pretty pictures. And you can see in the book, like here's a pictorial guide to all the resources that gives you different kinds of products and details on how to install them and how to avoid service upgrades, a whole bunch of stuff. So just so you know, the booklet is there at redwoodenergy.net's website. So my quick background is that I studied this in college, like how to incorporate renewable energy into buildings. It was a program called Appropriate Technology at what was then Humboldt State, now Cal Poly Humboldt, Polytechnical. There's a demonstration house there, and I took construction classes, and then I went to work for the big GC in our community, Danco Builders, and helped them start Danco Communities, which is an affordable housing division that just did all-electric, 100% solar-powered affordable housing, which is how they managed to sort of grow into a real business by doing something special. And since 2011, I've been a consultant on how other developers can do that. And I've gotten a lot of skills in doing retrofits. I consult to various agencies in California and cities and et cetera to help accelerate electrification. And this is for you, like to help you guys get your questions answered. And I want you to see that this is very old. What we're talking about is not a new concept. It's not specific to California at all. Over in New York City is essentially where the real heat pump revolution began in the United States, and it was the breweries that were using them to make ice. And that was the #1 first usage, even all the way back in like 1850 in Australia. Like 1854, the first thing that got made was ice for beer. Yeah, as it is. Now, then in the 1880s, this is after heat pumps were being used, which at the time were like fueled by gas to run the pump, part of the heat pump. They started getting electricity to start putting the energy into, say, a heat pump. And one of the first places you see it being used is in the making of Triscuits, which were electric biscuits that were baked with an electric oven at Niagara Falls. It was a big deal. They just, like the organization just figured this out themselves. They're like, why are we named Triscuits? So it's because there was only a little bit of electricity available in the 1880s, but it was used in around hydroelectric dams, such as a couple of the rivers that come flowing in just above. This is the electric plant here. Now, in 1910, then we have about 10% of all Americans have access to electricity, and they're just pretty much in parts of cities, the wealthy parts of the city and the commercial districts, which essentially represent the wealthy parts of the city in their own way. And it's fun to look at these wires. People had so many different competing telephone companies, telegraph companies, and electric utilities, just huge snarls of wires everywhere. Wild stuff. This is a substation, spooky looking thing from 1910. Out in the rural areas, there's still almost no electricity. 10% of America had it, but it's pretty much just in cities. So in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, there were 1 million microgrids built. There would be large battery banks, usually with a gas generator, but sometimes with a wind turbine, sometimes with a small hydro dam nearby. What I learned when I was at Humboldt was how to do microhydro. It's still a very significant thing out here in the mountains. And in the 1930s, I grew up in a rural electric co-op in rural Wisconsin on a farm. I had party line when I was born for the first 4 years or so. And this was in 1930s, only 10% of rural America at that point had electricity. 90% didn't. And so the Rural Electrification Administration, in response to the crisis, essentially started bringing electricity through no interest, forgivable loans. Essentially, if you put up your own power poles and wires, you got to keep the infrastructure that was paid for. And this kid is smiling because he has a hybrid tractor. He doesn't have to turn a crank anymore. He's got an electric battery in it. Oh my gosh, and you can see the battery charger up there on the wall. So, like I said, this is old. 100 years ago, we're starting to get hybrid vehicles getting charged off the wall. In the 1930s is where you see air conditioners. Carrier, Willis Carrier, who had learned from the beer breweries how to make ice, and then he learned how to dehumidify a big printing press as his first big job, and he slowly got into making air conditioners. Carrier's still an American brand. So this is 1933. It's the smallest air conditioner made yet. And of course, they came to represent luxury, in the 1950s, understandably. Ronald Reagan was in charge of selling the luxury. He had discovered Marilyn Monroe. He knew everyone in Hollywood when he retired. And the utilities, they built him an all-electric mansion that he did little infomercials through, for minutes at a time. You can still find them on YouTube. And then he'd have every single possible Hollywood star from the 50s, the whole Brat Pack, Judy Garland, everyone showed up for his television show to do theater. And then there'd be Westinghouse and General Electric, who would then advertise the appliances, because you pretty much only bought large appliances from the utilities at the time. Refrigerators, stoves, things like that. They were produced by General Electric or Westinghouse almost exclusively. Their goal in advertising was also political. They got the National Electrical Code changed to require enough amperage delivered to homes, 100 amps, so you could have an all-electric house, like a 1,500 square foot average house in the 50s. You could do it all electric then. And they also shamed women frequently into buying more appliances. So you can either be like a dinner duchess or a galley slave, depending how many appliances you buy. This sort of aspirational American shame you into being a consumer goes back a ways. But it came kind of crashing to a halt in the 70s. That's when our 1973 oil embargo, and then in 1979 again, led to lines for gas. And since America just started building any significant amount of nuclear power, hydropower wasn't a whole lot of new dams being built at that point. It was pretty much oil and coal. And the oil prices went through the roof. Electricity prices quadrupled. So it stopped the all-electric construction movement. In the solar movement, which had been started for satellites, basically, was kept alive in Northern California, where I just coincidentally came to college, sight unseen, because I was interested in the academics, just to be clear. And I did not smoke weed at all. I lived in the drug-free dorm. But it was wild here, and because this is essentially the only people who had both cash and a really big motive to be able to live off-grid, where they could grow a cash crop. And so the world's second largest wholesaler of solar panels was in Redway, California, which is a tiny little rural town near here. And they had a helpline that I would use for hours at a time to learn about how to do wind turbines, microhydro, and solar from the real folks. So that was true in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s into the early 2000s, like 30 years of leadership up here, technically. Things change at a federal level. This is a compromise, bill. There's Nancy Pelosi and George Bush II. And this is when we got solar tax credits, the 30% solar tax credits out of this compromise, and also a federal goal of trying to have zero net energy buildings by 2020, all electric, 100% solar powered. Now I'm going to sort of run through the rest of this little history. California had their own version. It was calling for all electric construction, but the building code still favored gas because of our 2000 energy crisis as well as the 1970s ones. So I was doing kind of renegade stuff by doing all electric 100% solar powered construction. They'd sort of made the code almost impossible to do that all the way through 2022. The code did not allow or recommend it, but then in Berkeley, they adopted the gas ban, and that really shifted things at the state level as 80 cities quickly. It was one every 2 weeks adopted a gas ban in California, up until the court ruling that it couldn't be done for saying that a gas ban was the same thing as an efficiency regulation, which is definitely not true, but anyway. So what you can see on the right-hand side here is the sale of heat pumps versus gas furnaces in yellow, heat pumps in blue. Note that in 2019, they got to the same spot. They stayed there in 2020. Sorry, not 20. They got to the same spot in 2020 and 2021. 2022 is when it shifted, and it's gotten even larger in 2024. This is not only a national phenomenon, but an international phenomenon, period. Like, the electrification of the industry has happened. I was just at this huge 99-acre interior expo in Orlando a couple weeks ago, and everyone was selling heat pumps, including all the gas appliance companies like Rinnai. So naturally, just because it's cheaper to build all electric, this is what was happening without any policy intervention. In fact, policy opposition, if anything, from the Obama administration, which was pursuing clean natural gas, quote unquote. Nonetheless, this is the market shift that was happening in the 2010s. This is documented by the Propane Education Research Council, because propane is in dark blue, and you can see how few places had market shift towards them. And almost everywhere, regardless of politics, it shifted towards electrification. This is a national map of, in 2020, the percentage of construction that's all electric in each state. Notice how bad California is, how bad New York is, Illinois. These are some of the most highly populated states in the United States. The fourth one is Florida, which is the most all electric at 77%, including both of Trump's big tower systems down there. I think it's true of Mar-a-Lago, but I can't get into the kitchen. But it's because it's so close to the beach, you usually can't even get natural gas underneath the ground, so close to the water table. So it's very likely that it, like everyone else in Florida, is an all-electric kitchen if he's that close to the beach. This is what we built last year. And this year, we're only building more solar, which is yellow, and batteries, which is this light blue. We're doing a little bit less wind turbines. No nuclear power at all is being built in 2025. And so there's still gas being built. But this is what was built last year. And I'm saying the trend is only towards more battery and solar this year. But we still have only about 6-7% of what's being built for new power systems, second year in a row, and this is market forces, is still natural gas. The shift happened where it went, this is last year, the year before it was 61% solar and renewables and such, and the year before that was 49%. So you can see, like, it was last year and this year, but all of a sudden it's done. Like, they're just not building gas plants almost at all anywhere in the country. It's just too expensive. This is the market shift towards electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. On the left-hand side, this is national. On the right-hand side, this is the Bay Area. In dark greens, you're seeing like 60% of new cars being purchased all electric. So this is happening, and is like happened and happening. Now, I want to give you something to aspire to because I think it's fun. So this is an all-electric house. It goes 100 miles a day across the Atlantic or the Pacific, basically gets you from New York to London in 3 weeks. It comes with a submarine and with a jet ski that pop off to either side. as well as a hot tub outside, well, kind of a small swimming pool, hot tub. And it's got a helicopter pad. It comes with an electric helicopter, but they haven't really released it yet. Here over in Florida, the home of all electric construction, number one, like I said, 77%. This is an all electric floating solar powered mansion. It's not really intended for open seas like the other one. It's just supposed to tootle around, you know, in the nice warm sand. It's a party house. Now, on a budget, you might get yourself a condensing washer dryer. This can plug into any outlet, or a heat pump washer dryer plugs into any outlet. On a budget, you might get this like 50-gallon or 40-gallon Rheem tank, plugs into any outlet. If you're just doing a room or two, you might do these kinds of heat pumps. They're packaged. There's a lot of different kinds of packaged heat pumps. And this is what I cook on: 2 burners of induction and a countertop oven. I serve 3 children, you know, like I feed myself. It is totally doable if you just want to like get your kitchen electrified immediately to get some high-end countertop appliances. If you want to go with like more expensive stuff, this is how you don't worry about a service upgrade. You get a smart panel. Span would be the right one for most situations. Lumen, this is for smaller homes. But the Span on the left, it can take a 60 amp service that you have and make it look like almost 200 amps. So you can plug in everything you want. And on the right hand side, this Lumen, it takes 30 amps and it makes it look like about 150. So you can plug in all the things that are really high power, whatever you want, or this is like the power efficient strategy where you just sort of plug it in and it works 99% of the time. Maybe on the coldest night, this water heater doesn't get as hot as you'd like it. Like maybe on Thanksgiving, it's kind of tough cooking on 2 burners, but you know, you just cook slow. The last thing here is that if you miss fire, this is back when my kid was 6 years old, and she's playing here with my brand new Optimist fireplace. You can get them pretty cheap now for like $20 to $40 on Amazon. These little diffusers with LED lights in them that look like fire. But this is like a $400 one with fake logs and such. And I had my little tiny house Christmas tree set up next to it. And all the presents I wrapped around it. And you could stick your fingers in it, but it looked like fire. So it's completely charming. Other people I know nowadays, they get the battery-powered candles and they put them in their former gas fireplace. And they have like 13 votive candles that are all flickering and look really beautiful like a fire. They even come with actual wax wrapped around them. So that's the end of my slides, to sort of give you a quick vision for how and what this might look like. Could be really awesome. Could be very practical and cheap. and I'm here for now handing this over. I'm going to go over into the chat and take any questions there. But my co-presenter tonight, where is she?
Lisa.
Lisa, there you are. Hi, Lisa Ryers is a electrification coach from one of our most distinguished organizations, Rewiring America, which is like one of the architects of the Inflation Reduction Act's electric favoring chunks of like home stuff, rebates, tax credits, all the good stuff. So Lisa, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. That the history is always so fascinating to me. Like I recently heard about how the reason why we have right turn on red is really because it came out of the oil crisis of the 70s, and they didn't want like cars to have to just sit there and wait at a light, you know? So it's just like these things that are part of our everyday thing we don't think about. And it's just so cool, the history that you shared about electrification. And it's been with us the entire time. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Yeah, so as Sean said, for the past year, I've been working with the Rewiring America team in their electric coach program. So basically, I coach the coaches. I'm one of those people they call a guide, and we kind of just work with everyday Americans who are interested in learning how to electrify and also just trying to share that information with their neighbors, because we know that the biggest recommendation for electrification is not from on high, it's from you, it's from your neighbors, it's from people that they trust. So our courses are there, they're available to everyone, and I'll have kind of a link to our resources at the end of the program. And my background is in architecture and design and green building as an accredited professional with the LEED green building program. So focus today is on renters. Actually, for this presentation, I was invited by Cora, who we went to the same college, right? So I wanted to include this slide from my college days when we were renting a house, and our landlord decided that he was going to lock the thermostat, and we were living in Rhode Island. So we as tenants didn't really like that, and our methodology for a workaround for that was to actually put a bag of ice on the thermostat. So I'm going to share with you maybe some other workarounds that might be a little bit more modern that you can deploy in your particular situation. And kind of, I think about the process as being kind of like a doula, in the fact that we're trying to help people breathe through the process. We've been through it multiple times, and you're going to have a wonderful experience at the end. So that's kind of the beginning. So talking about some of the, specific products that are under that electrification umbrella, one of the big things that we're always trying to sell people on, as Sean kind of shared with his 2-burner induction cooktop, is induction cooking. So how do we kind of talk to our property owner about switching out perhaps our gas range to an induction cooktop? Well, you have to kind of think about what is motivating the property owners, right? And they're obviously motivated by cost and liability concerns. So one lever that we can talk about with our property owner is they are quite aware about the number of apartment fires that happen in the US. Data shows that in 2023, there were over 76,000 apartment fires alone. So just understanding how induction works, and that it's probably the safest tool for cooking that is out there. One of the stories that you all probably heard through YouTube, etc., was that space in Colorado where a dog turned on the stove and just kind of set the whole place on fire. And you kind of compare that type of situation with, here's a situation with one client I was working with, and had their cat basically sitting on the stovetop. We're not going to talk about the sanitary aspects of it, but the important part of the equation is this part, the pan is cooking eggs. The cat is actually sitting on the cooktop, but the cat is not getting any type of residual activity from that. There can only be a magnetic source to magnetic source that's going to make the conduction of heat happen. So, and lastly, this same client, we were talking about how they use what's kind of called like a noodle board, this board that you can kind of put on top of as a chopping station or what have you. And they actually kind of use this same space as a standing desk in their kitchen when they want to, when everything is turned off, But it's just kind of crazy that that's just like another opportunity to have, an office desk, if you will. So for example, with our coaches, we had one coach in Oregon who wanted to start this conversation about induction cooking with their landlord. And they opened up the conversation by talking about how they came home one day and they live in a multicultural space, and their elderly father, they found out, they came home and the knob to their gas stove was not turned all the way back to 12 o'clock position. So it had been basically turned on, emitting methane, NOx, and all the other bad particulate matter the whole number of hours that they were out. So this is a really common thing. It can happen to any of us. And it was a way that she was able to actually just start the conversation with her landlord. So it's really important because there is this metric, as wonderful as induction is. The landlord, the property owner, is automatically going to go for the cheapest product out there, probably. And so since there's such a huge delta between what a current, at the big box store gas range is now to induction, you have to have kind of a good argument and also know about potential incentives and rebates to kind of close that delta up. So there's that. And then, yeah, Sean had this Proterra model in his presentation as well. And I love this 120 volt product. So kind of just dovetailing what I talked about on the last slide, another argument you can make with property owners is like, do the work for them. If the issue is, well, I would replace that water heater in your space, but of that cost issue, try and connect them with money. So there are, basically websites and organizations and government entities like BayREN up here in the Bay Area that are specifically geared towards multifamily property owners that can kind of push some money their way. This is kind of a great thing just in terms of when you are at that point of replacing this particular product, if you have a space that has a louvered door, that should usually do the runaround from the space requirement that is required, the 700 cubic feet that is usually required for these type of models. So this is kind of a common apartment situation where you have your own water heater. And if you have a louvered door, or just replace the door you have with a louvered door, this is a potential replacement for you. So, and the other really cool thing is like this model is like 4 amps. It's a shared circuit model. So it's really not drawing a whole lot. So in our case study with Roberto here in San Francisco, he passed on this, knowing about this Golden State rebate of $900 from any utility, any of the 3 major utilities in California. And so again, you're kind of lowering the delta of costs there. If something costs $1,700 and you're kind of taking down almost $1,000, it's getting it competitive with a gas unit. And I'll just kind of share this as we go into the next slide. This would also have the opportunity for another $2,000, which is currently held on pause by executive order. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So just an idea of some of the constraints and workarounds that you might have. Cora and Rupert from BrightSaver are going to talk about this backyard solar, which is also a good workaround. And particularly here in California, it's important to know that even good-minded, climate-minded property owners, the legislation in California is structured such right now that they're really limited in terms of they can definitely get solar on their properties, but it's not as cost effective as it could be. And it doesn't pencil out a lot of the time unless they have some kind of grandfathering in from NEM or they have some kind of government subsidy. And the reason for this is that right now, properties that have more than 2 meters, they can use their own rooftop solar energy in real time, but they can't use it for common areas and places like where you would want it, such as parking lots and garages for those charging stations, right? So this type of backyard solar is a good workaround. From my climate-based fellowship, I learned about a product also called Moon 5, which is also a product that is a designated product for apartment and multifamily situations and charging in that. And then lastly, I did just want to share some resources for you at Rewiring America. If you go to our website, there's a whole pull down section for renters. So we've got you there. I also wanted to connect you with the website DSIRE, which is kind of a wonky website, but it really is an aggregator for the entire country of state incentives and utility incentives. So if you can kind of ignore the bad font and, get kind of wonky, it'll really give you up-to-date information. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, with the current executive order that's put this huge pause on the distribution of Inflation Reduction Act funds that really need to go to those people who are, 80% of the average mean income and below, and moderate income folks. Right now in California, we have $80 million that's on pause. We have it, we can't distribute it because it's currently on pause. So whether you live in California or in another state, really encourage you to contact your representatives and use your voice, because we need to connect people with money and make electrification happen faster.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hand it off then to Rupert Mayer of BrightSaver. And they're going to talk about the opportunity to do backyard solar. So I got involved in solar in 1995, and so I got to both do off-grid solar installations and then get to be around when it was that transition spot in between off and on-grid, like 2000, 2001, which was exciting. And I've seen the utilities fight rooftop solar every step of the way with everything they ever could, like fight us if there was a Bay Area law that got passed and they sued that, and it took state action basically just to even allow people to put any solar onto the grid. Hopefully Rupert is going to teach us about how to do like some really cheap and easy opportunities, since the state's been going after the harder, more expensive routes. Okay, take it away, Rupert. Teach us.
Okay, thank you very much for having us. So BrightSaver is a nonprofit that was started by the three of us. Kevin is a former tech entrepreneur and philanthropist. Cora has a long history in the nonprofit space in education and in climate. And I'm also an ex-tech entrepreneur who decided it's time to do something more meaningful and something that we are really, really passionate about, and that is combating climate change, making energy, more renewable energy, more accessible, more affordable, especially to lower income groups. And yeah, thank you very much for having us here today. So we heard a lot about this fascinating 100+ year history of electrification, and how now electrification is living through a new boom, and how electric homes and appliances are better, safer, healthier, cheaper, everything. But one of the questions is, of course, where will all the power come from? And we are used to the power just coming from the grid, but the grid is actually struggling with all this electrification, with all the additional demand from the electric cooktops and the electric cars, and also the data centers and AI. We hear a lot about that in the media today, how that is such an energy hog. And we hear a lot about the grid needing to, having to double or even triple our transmission infrastructure, and all of that is going to take a long, long time. But luckily, to Sean's point, there is decentralized solar. Almost everyone can generate their own electricity on their home with rooftop solar. Or is it really almost everyone? Unfortunately, I just looked it up. Around the country in the US, less than 5% of all households have rooftop solar. And that is because there are a lot of obstacles. And one of the biggest obstacles is that it's simply very, very expensive. So a rooftop solar system, you're easily talking about tens of thousands of dollars. And a lot of people cannot afford that. Obviously, a lot of people, although there are financing options, do not qualify for the financing. A lot of roofs are maybe too old, too angular, have too many vents or skylights or windows. There's just so many reasons why people who would want to produce their own electricity cannot do it. And rooftop solar remains a niche way of producing your own cheaper, greener energy. And so our premise, our mission basically is making this orders of magnitudes more accessible by, rather than having people pay tens of thousands of dollars for a rooftop solar installation, give them an entry into creating their own clean energy for as low as $29 a month and guaranteeing savings with respect to their electricity bill. So how is that possible? It is already happening in Europe at a pretty significant scale. You can Google these newspaper articles, New York Times, 9 months ago or so, about the Germans combating climate change from their balconies. There was a more recent article in The Guardian about how it's catching on in Spain, in Barcelona now. And yeah, different sources will put the numbers between the high 100,000s or even more than 1 million of these so-called balcony solar power plants that are now installed in Germany and allowing people to produce their own energy with a much, much, much lower entry barrier of having this very expensive installation on their roof. And so why is that not happening in the US? In the US, it is almost unheard of. There are a number of reasons. We have a different electrical system here. We have 120 volts, while most of the rest of the world is using 230 volts. So all these German systems don't really work over here. They're also using different plugs. And there are also other hurdles. Most importantly, to Sean's earlier point, that the utilities here they wield a lot of power in many different senses, and they strictly prohibit backfeeding into the grid. So you need an additional device that limits or prevents the backfeeding into the grid. That needs to be installed by an electrician. That makes it more expensive. So it's just not that easy. In Germany, people are literally buying these solar panels in the supermarket for $200 and plugging them into, strapping them to their balconies with a few zip ties and plugging them into the outdoor outlet. And yeah, here, finally, people just have never heard about it. And so we've set out to change that, to jumpstart that movement here. And that's why we're here today. And we're putting a little twist on it because there are fewer balconies in the US than in Europe, and also more hurdles to mounting those panels on balconies. So we are actually calling it backyard solar. And this is Cora and I with a few real life backyard solar use cases. This is in my backyard, which is actually right outside here, with a solar panel just placed on the ground. This is Cora with the solar panel hung from her deck. And this is me behind, on this wall behind me here in my little studio. I have a wall mount single solar panel. So this is the product that these products are available from a few small vendors. They're pretty much DIY products. You can order them on the internet. Some of them are maybe of questionable origin, may not be certified. There are very few vendors that have fully UL certified products that you can consider safe. And we basically, as BrightSaver, we want to be an enabler for this technology. So we're not developing our own technology. We might in the future. For now, we are a distributor and a financing entity for that one company that we've identified that we think makes a really good system that works here in the United States. And yeah, I don't think I want to get into way more technical detail here. We'll leave it to the Q&A. So this is it, backyard solar for the US. Thank you.
Woo! Woo! So are you allowed to tell us what is the manufacturer of the product you found that is appropriately UL listed, and etc.?
Yes, it's a small company called Kraftstrom, and they are based in Texas. funnily, you might notice a bit of an accent in my when I'm talking. I'm Austrian.
Barely there. You sound just as American as most of us.
So I'm Austrian, and these two guys who running Craftstrom happen to be Austrians as well. They have been playing in the German balcony solar market for many, many years. But since one of the brothers lives in Texas, and he basically just he got stuck over here, they decided, hey, let's create a system that works for the US. And so they developed all the components. They've been selling it for a few years now. And we said, okay, this is a system that we can trust. We can bring over here and try to scale up and just make it more affordable, more accessible, and educate people about it.
That's fantastic. So, you are putting it out there on the market. You're not trying to manufacture it yourself. You said you have a financing approach to it. So I think you guys charge a monthly fee or something. Tell us about how much it costs to get access to the solar, and like, I assume it's a good deal. Like
Yes,
you guys get paid some money, but it's also a net profit for the person who's doing the system.
Absolutely. It's a win-win. So we are working very hard to make it very accessible. That's really also the reason why we started this as a nonprofit. We do not want to have to take venture capital and at some point be beholden to investors who will want to increase the margins once we've made it a success. If we make it a success, then we want to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and make it even a bigger success. So that is really important. And we're starting out at this price point of $29 per month for a lease for 2 panels. And we are, based on our calculations, people should save between $30 and $60 on their energy bill. PG&E is the utility here, so we always use it synonymously, their PG&E bill. And
so let's be clear, is it if they give $29 to you guys a month, you help them get the solar array setup that's legal, legit for them to plug in. Their benefit could be $30 a month. Is that essentially $1 more in benefit than it costs them?
Yes, in that, let's say in the worst case scenario, they might save only 30 days, so they $30, so they would have only $1 net savings. But we do quite extensive modeling up front, so we will tell them. We will not promise them, hey, you'll save whatever, $100 or so. So we want to make sure people go into this with realistic expectations. And we will tell them, well, like, based on our modeling, based on your energy use, based on how sunny your yard is, where you're placing this, we think you will save $45 on your PG&E bill. You'll pay us $29, so you'll save $16 net per month. That's $200 a year. That might not be huge, but it's certainly a starting point. There's also this satisfaction.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. Like, it is a successful solution, ideally, that doesn't require the utility to say yes or no and cost
Exactly.
$20,000, etc. Like, it's its own good thing.
Yeah.
Now,
years. Sorry, after 6 years, you'll own the panels. Sorry, that's why I'm not talking. Go
oh,
ahead.
you own the panels after 6 years? Oh, beautiful.
Yes, and
That's
also
25 years.
the beautiful thing is, PG&E rates, utility rates, we've seen them only go up and up and up. They know only one direction, while our $29 is flat. So even if at the beginning, let's say the savings might not seem spectacular, still you're starting with something, you're starting to generate free energy in your yard, and the savings will only go up and up. And after 6 years, the savings are all yours.
That's great. How do you become a partner? Like, for some of us local organizations who are into solar and want to bring it to our community, are you doing those kinds of things so that we can connect you to other parts of California, like Southern California Edison territory?
Absolutely. So I think we really need to spare Cora's voice, but
Yes,
she is
we
our head
will.
of partnership.
I'm the one to email.
So
May I ask on the wattage? So over 6 years, that means you spend about $2,088 in fees. And for $2,088, what is the size of the system that you're selling in? Is this like what is it?
An 800-watt system.
Excellent. Okay, so 800-watt system. That is for other folks, when I'm doing pricing, that is a cheap price for solar. If it was an installed solar array, you'd see that price at like an apartment complex scale of solar when it's like sold in bulk for installed, because installed would be in the range of like $3,000 for 1,000 watts, and you said it was $2,088 over 6 years
And then you would also
for
have
800
financing.
watts.
Yeah, then you would
Like
also
it-
have financing charges. Yeah.
There's what's it again?
No, even if you took the $3,000 install, but then you wanted to finance it over 6 years, you would also pay interest to whoever
Right.
financed. So that's already baked in here as well.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say that this is a good deal. Like this is a better deal than generally I would be able to squeeze out of a very large bulk purchase and bulk installation of solar panels. So like, cool, nicely done. Go ahead.
Some people, there's a couple questions in the chat, Sean,
Mhm.
about how much can you power with 2 panels?
Right. So 800 watts. So when people, if you're using that electricity in the house, all of it, basically homes that are all electric take in the range of 4 kilowatts to 7 kilowatts. And he's offering, Rupert is offering 0.8, not 1, not 7, but 0.8, like a little bit less than 1 kilowatt. So let's think of this as like maybe 1/7 of your energy consumption in a year of an all-electric home. Could be a little less, maybe it's only 1/10 because you're a higher consumer, whatever. But it's in that range. At best it's like 1/5. That's like if you were one of those very frugal homes where it's just like you and your cat, and you're not doing a whole lot, like then maybe it's like 1/5 of your energy consumption in a year. So that's where it is, roughly.
That's realistic. And yes, it's only 2 panels on the roof. You might have 10, 15, 20 panels. So yes, it is a fraction of that. But if you can't have it on the roof, this is at least a way to get started.
Or you can think of it like your EV. It's going to be the amount of solar that they're offering is about, if you drive 12,000 miles in a year, which is the average, if you drove that much, then you'd need about 2 kilowatts of solar. And this is 0.8 or 0.8 kilowatts. So it's like a little bit less than half as much
5,000
solar as
miles.
you need for driving in a year for an
Yeah.
average car.
Yeah.
That's
And
pretty
you can
good.
do more if you have space. Then you could do 4 panels, maybe even 6 panels.
On different circuits, though, I assume? Like how,
So,
when you like skip it the panels, because panels come in different wattages. Just
Mhm.
tell me what wattage is. You said that your starter is 800 watts or 0.8 kilowatts. You offer more?
Yes, you can basically take several. So you could take 2 pairs or possibly even 3 pairs. I talked to someone up in the wine country in Sonoma who has a farmhouse there. He wants 10 panels and he will put them around the house. And yes, they will be connected to several circuits, but generally 2 sets of panels. So 4 panels, 1,600 watts. That is safe for one 15 amp circuit, which would be 80
Right.
watts.
So, and does your system have, assuming it has an auto shut off, so if there's a grid outage within 60 seconds, your panels are no longer producing electricity, correct?
Actually, milliseconds, yes. That is an
Millisecond.
inherent safety feature, because also if you pull out the plug, you do not want to shock yourself. So the inverter shuts down almost instantly
Mm-hmm.
as soon as it is not connected to the grid.
So walk us through of working with HOAs, because we have a lot of people who live in HOAs and are having difficulty even, with rooftop solar, even though there is a law in California for that. So speak to that, Rupert.
Yeah. Yes, that is one of the challenges to adoption for sure. We are now seeing a lot of homeowners who say, well, I can do whatever I want in my backyard, within my fence, within my perimeter. But if you are renting or if you are in a condo and you have an HOA, then yes, you will have to run it by them. You will have to get the buy-in. But the interesting thing is this is all about starting a movement for us. And in Germany, for example, the movement movement started 10 years ago. And then once the movement had enough momentum, laws started getting passed, making it easier, making it harder or impossible for the utility companies to prohibit the backfeeding. They now just have to accept it up to 800 watts. And also more recently, law got passed making it harder for homeowners associations and landlords to just veto solar of all kinds. So we think this is all a process, and we are starting the movement, and we are grateful for every support that we can get, but it's not going to work for everyone right out the gate.
But I think there is, like, the HOA can't impede it to a certain point. They can't have you spend more than $1,000 to accommodate their requirements, is what, kind of in a nutshell from what I've heard, that they can't stand in the way of solar completely. They might say, oh, you have to put it over here, you have to do that, or you have to use that kind of flashing. It has to be a black panel, like some of those things aesthetically, but they can't really stand in the way.
That is great to hear, and we'll learn about that. We're still very early on. We have a number of people who are really interested on who are renters or who are in an HOA, and who will talk to their HOAs and will find what kind of arguments they run into. Some HOAs are very supportive. One of the people who signed up with us is actually the president of an HOA, and she said she would love to be the one who proposes this to everyone in her condo building. So they do not always have to be the gatekeepers; they can also be the enablers sometimes. So there's good people everywhere, and I think that's on all of us who are the early adopters of all these technologies to spread the word and make the argument and explain to people why this is a good thing, and this is how we'll get there.
Now Patty has a question here of, like, if the solar array is on the lower level of her townhome patio, can it be disconnected and stolen easily? Do you have a way of securing it?
That is also a concern that some people have brought up. Solar panels are actually not very expensive. So the panel alone is just $130. So, and it is quite clunky. It's quite unwieldy. It's not easy to carry off. It doesn't fit in a car. So we don't think in practice that theft will be a great concern, but to some people in some areas, it will be more than in others maybe. But it's nowhere as, you hear a lot about catalytic converters getting stolen from out under the car these days. So a solar panel is only the fraction of the value, and it is hard to steal. But yeah, some people secure it with a steel cable or with a bike lock just to make it a little harder to carry away.
That's a good idea. You have to add that to the kit, Rupert. An add-on option. Hey, if you want to unshare your screen, we can kind of open it up for questions so we can see everyone. And if you want to wave or unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you directly. We have about 5 to 10 minutes left of the show. And I saw somebody, John, you had a question for the backyard solar, wondering about the wires, the conduit, the inverter, those kinds of things. Can you answer that, Rupert? Like, what comes with the solar panels? Like, traditionally, when we get a solar panel, we got an inverter, the conduits, there's electrician wiring things.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I would have one at hand, but I don't at the moment. So yes, it is a regular solar panel. It is a microinverter that looks like most microinverters. So the little inverters that go right behind the solar panel, usually on the roof, that are mounted with the panels. It's an electronics box about this size that weighs a pound or two, and it's mounted right with the panel. And from that, you simply have a power cord with a plug like this, and you plug it into an outdoor outlet. And then there is this one other component, which is the smart power meter, which is essentially a sensor that gets mounted in the breaker panel. So that's why we bring an electrician to the site, and who will check the circuit, whether it's viable for plugging in this source of power, and who will install this sensor in the breaker panel, and that prevents the backfeeding into the grid by measuring whether energy is flowing into the house or is about to flow back out of the house. And if the latter were to happen, it signals to the inverter to power down. So the system never produces more energy than the home is using at any point in time.
So
And
Rupert,
that's
is there a is there a limitation to how much power you can have with the panels?
The limitation is basically just the circuit. So your typical electrical circuit is rated at least 15 amps times 120 volts. That's 1800 watts. So 4 panels, you would have 1600 watts. So that's the maximum you would want to plug into one circuit, unless it's a higher rated 20 or 30 amp circuit.
Very good. Thank you.
Rupert, can you share a little more of a case study of somebody who's, even in your own home, when you installed this, how did it change your bill, or what did it kind of offload in terms of the energy? So people can kind of think about, like, why am I getting the panel? I want to charge my car with it. I want to, run my appliances with it.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So at the moment, we're not offering a battery. So it's really the electricity that gets used during the daytime. So we certainly see ourselves adding a battery maybe in a year or two as costs come down further. But at the moment, we're so focused on the economics, on the savings, that adding a battery isn't viable yet. So that means you need to use the electricity while it's being produced during the daytime. So any daytime load, so the number one daytime load that everyone has, the thing that's constantly running, is the fridge. But beyond that, heat pumps are great. Of course, everywhere where it's hot, people have air conditioners that typically run during the day. So that consumes a lot of energy. And then, yes, here we have the car chargers, and with more
These
modern
ones, I wanted to interject because one of the things that you're doing is making solar small enough to be accessible. These chargers are specifically ones that allow people to do bidirectional charging. So the Tesla Universal and the ChargePoint HomeFlex, cars now are being built with AC inverters built into the car. So it takes the DC battery electricity, makes it into AC in the car, and these chargers are already built to be able to then accept the power and put it into the grid in the same way that your solar array set up, like your controls and your inverter are doing the same thing. You have an AC inverter from your DC solar panel. You have a controls that dictates does it go into the grid or get self-consumed, etc. And so I feel like we're very close to this like kind of revolutionary moment in which people have a massive battery on wheels. 40 kilowatt hours, 70 kilowatt hours, 130 kilowatt hour batteries out there now. That's on the one side, huge amounts of storage. And then you can get a standard solar array put in, or you can do what you guys are suggesting, which is put in some, maybe like, you have a 0.8 kilowatt system and you said you could do 1.6 or maybe 2.4. You could put in a good chunk of solar if you were careful about where you plugged it in. And yeah, like, awesome, let's go. And I want to just praise your 6 years and then you own it strategy. That's pretty cool, considering how long the solar panel system should last, 20, 30 years. And those kinds of paybacks are what people were hoping for in the first place, if they bought the solar array. And so you're making it so it's like kind of a guarantee. They own the solar panels at 6 years, just as if they were selling electricity, and they're getting the benefit of selling electricity because there's some profit in there. Like, oh, you guys, you're doing this is very well thought out to like make it work for people. I like it a lot. So I have a date to go to, my friends. I'm a single man. And so I would just like to wish you all a very happy evening. Thank you, Andy, for your applause. And you're applauding that I'm single? Me too. Me too.
We're applauding your dating. We're applauding your dating.
She's got her doctorate. She's a really cool lady from the local university. I got taste. So anyway, I hope you all have a very nice evening. You guys take care. It was a great to to chat.
Sean, can you just take 1 minute that
Oh, I can do one more
about the
minute.
guide and how it's
Oh, yeah.
new, that you've
So,
done some updates.
There is a new version of our guide which has updated products in it. It still has the 2022 date. That's about to get changed. It's just a typo basically. But up on our website, our guide to single family retrofits, we went through it and cleaned up a little bit, basically just refreshed, made sure the products were new, that we had some new images that we thought were important for people to have, etc. So not only was that like a good place for you to go for some toilet reading, it's also brand new for you, fresh
Hot off the
toilet
presses.
reading.
Yeah. And it's great because you can click and go right to heat pumps, and you can go right to induction stoves, so you get tons. And we do want to let you know that we're happy to help you on or off the show. So if you make a request, email us. We're happy to kind of dig deeper into your own electrification journey as well.
Yeah, if you have questions about your house, give me a week, but you'll definitely get a response. And I'm totally dedicated, as are all of our team here, to like coaching you. So like you have an abundance of riches. We are here to help you if you have any questions. Okay,
Yeah.
good night.
Good night. Thanks, Sean. So good to
Take
see
care.
all of you. There's tons of resources, like the Switch is On has tons of resources, and even contractors as well. There's a whole kit for renters on kitchen electrification. And my favorite is Rewiring America. I use it all the time. And we hope that you will advocate to continue the IRA. It's really important, even if you know that your elected official is behind it. The more that we call and email right now, calling is so, so important. We'll include that number in the follow-up email. You can call the DC switchboard and speak to your elected officials. I've done it about 20 times this year already and always get very, very nice responses. So it's really, really worth it. And if you have a case study for our future show, these are some of the things that we're looking for. If you want to electrify, we want to know some of those kinds of things so we can send that to you if you're ever interested, because we're always looking for case studies that either are fully done or part done or just getting started. We take all of those. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. And you'll be hearing from us with the full PowerPoint from tonight, all the PowerPoints, as well as all the resources and our contact details. And I hope you're going to stay in touch with Bright Saver. We're so excited you guys came. And Lisa, thank you from Rewiring America. Are there any questions before we go? Anyone else? It looks like you guys are ready to start your evening. So we will catch you next month on the Ask Sean Show. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.